Please remember, none of this is financial advice. I guess the only time most people think about injustice is when it happens to them. Charles Bukowski. According to the World Economic Forum, 10% of global GDP will assemble into cryptographic assets in the coming decade, encompassing a total value of 10 trillion. Thus, the tokenization market will attain 2.67 billion with just 4 years from now. Also, as per the transparency
due to the international monetary system. So, I would say will be some systemic changes, but I think one where in general, it will allow more countries, big and small, to have a seat at the table. 1.7 billion people in developing countries to have financial inclusion. So I think overall, it will democratize the access to financial services, which it will be in the benefit of humanity overall.
That's a good statement, Michael.
In 7 years, 1/4 of the broader money supply of the world will be on digital assets. The trend is to reduce the dependence on the dollar. A world without reserve currencies. Settlement can happen on the internet without the need of correspondent banking. What will that do to the international monetary system? It will flip it upside down. The Internet of Value is an international monetary system without friction and is highly efficient.
This is much more than about digital currency. This and China sees this much more than about digital currency. They see this as a way to create the world's first fully integrated, fully networked digital economy. All transactions in their economy, whether it be securities transactions, future transactions, commercial lending, commercial payments, retail payments, will be fully networked with their digital currency as almost the software operating system for a digital economy. And that will wring huge amounts of percentage points out of cost and latency out of their economy. It will drive the world's fastest growing economy into hyperdrive in terms of speed and efficiency. And we talk about currency zones. We talk about the dollar zone in North and South America. We talk about the Euro zone. Those are zones of informal influence. They're zones of sort of analog importance of one currency compared to another. They're not fully networked digital zones of networking. And what China is going to build is a fully networked currency zone. We're going to talk about currency zones in the future as fully digital networks. And the United States needs to be thinking about the role of the dollar in worlds where you have fully networked currency zones. And that's what we need to be exploring this in the United States as well.
This is much more than just digital currencies. It's a convergence of technology that will put the largest economies in hyperdrive. Creating more GDP is more wealth. When the world moves to this new system, the wealthier our world will become. These networks will be bridged by public blockchains. Nations will have their own private permission systems, but when you leave those networks, trustless systems are needed. And that is where open and public blockchains come into play. The more open, the freer the networks are. The more that can be developed and built on top of those networks. This means innovation can spawn, creating new applications and therefore more demand for these networks. The most successful currency zones will be the most used ones, and the most used ones will be the most valuable ones.
I think it's important that we get to a place where we can make an informed decision about this and do so expeditiously. I don't think we're behind. I think it's more important to do this right than to do it fast. We are the world's reserve currency, and I think we're in a good place to make that analysis and make that decision. By the way, which will be a government-wide decision. We would do this. We would have to have a meeting of the minds with the administration, and also probably with Congress. We would really like to have broad support for this. It's a very important innovation, and I think we would need that to go ahead, and that's the process we're engaged in. Thank you.
The journalist asked Powell if he thinks the U.S. is falling behind in the race for CBDC. This makes Powell very uncomfortable, as you could see. He was fidgeting, stuttering, and looking down. Recently, Zero Hedge wrote an article about an amendment in the infrastructure bill that snuck in the Fed coin. It's not legal for the Fed to have that much control with a Fed coin, and laws need to be passed before they can use a Fed coin. It was snuck in by Don Breyer. Don Breyer recently proposed a law that would give XRP clarity as a utility token and supersede what is happening with the SEC. That amendment was denied, but I find that to be a huge coincidence.
Japan will closely collaborate with like-minded countries and regions and work strategically to fulfill this vision. At the same time, Japan continues to play a leading role in the establishment of a free and fair economic order. In the area of digital technology, Japan will exercise its leadership in making rules to advance the data-free flow with trust, in order to counter protectionism and inward-looking tendencies. As we maximize the use of the potential of digital space, new technologies must not be used to undermine our universal values. Japan will contribute constructively to the discussions at the UN and other multilateral forums, and also provide capacity-building support to ASEAN and other countries in order to work towards the realization of a free, fair, and secure cyberspace.
Japan is at the forefront and is harnessing this technology that will bring the internet a value. They see the potential in a free, fair, and secure economic order as well as cyberspace. Blockchain is security, trust, and fairness. Since they are harnessing this tech, they have a seat at the table to establish the standards and write the rule book.
As our society will go through a digital transition in parallel with the climate one, as a country we also advocate the need to close the digital gap across nations to ensure a level playing field. Although Malta enjoys a positive and professional relationship as a digital island, we aim to further enhance our potential in the field and fast-track our digital transformation. Our aim is to implement modernized and secure digital services that are accessible to all. These efforts will circumvent any of the disruptions caused by COVID-19, notably in the economy, education, health, and the public administration. Digitalization will benefit and empower humanity if it is accessible to all our peoples.
Malta is one of the blockchain capitals of the world. The nation of Malta is digitizing and updating their infrastructure and allowing innovation to flourish. The lagging countries can't resist this change because this technology is global and can relocate.
And countries like China have been frustrated by the dollar's power and the weaponization of the dollar. And so this is a very strategic move by China to gain control on the consumer and to slowly cut away at the dollar's influence. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but it should be a cause for concern for the United States. And I think that rather than remain in an era of dollar dominance, I think that we need to transition to an era of dollar innovation. And I think that the United States has a responsibility as the global reserve leader to gather its like-minded countries into a digital Bretton Woods and to create a framework, perhaps a digital asset bill of rights for how countries should be using these digital assets and make a stark difference from what China is doing, which is all control. And ultimately, it's using its financial power to control its citizens and surveillance.
We have heard Kristalina Georgieva and Mark Carney mention a new Bretton Woods. We have heard about the Great Reset. We hear the central bankers foreshadowing what is to come. There is simply too much wealth at stake for the West not to develop standards. This is in the works, it just hasn't surfaced yet.
You know, that's the interesting thing here. And it's always been, and that broke today that they're literally trying to shut it down. That's what despotic regimes do because they're afraid of this technology. This technology sidesteps the U.S. banking system. You know, cryptocurrencies are not controlled by the Fed, controlled by something else. And they're controlled by that, you know, the open, what they call the open ledger of the various blockchains. And they're not controlled by the Fed. And, you know, the Fed will say, the policymakers in the U.S., this is why a lot of people think that the U.S. is going to do something like that, and that this sort of draconian rule by enforcement is sort of a softer way of not banning it. But we have laws here too. I mean, we have a constitution in this country. So it's a little different than the communist Chinese who oppress everybody.
But it gives us in the U.S. an opportunity to kind of establish our dominance in this space. If it's something that we're not going to compete with China.
The Chinese are good at stealing our technology. They're not good at developing it. Why is that? It's because they do the crap that they did today, where they just take out an industry. Mm-hmm. So we're going to develop the technology if we can. If Gary Gensler and if they don't blow this, we're going to develop this. We're going to develop super speed transaction, open ledger technology that's going to cut costs for consumers and everybody else. The Chinese won't. Now, they'll try to steal it, which they do all the time with some success, but we're going to do it if the regulators don't blow it. And I think Ripple, listen, Blair Garrenhouse sounds like a great guy. I don't know him that well. He's a smart guy. You better, to take out their business, you better prove that they're crooks. Not just people who didn't disclose, come in on their hands and knees and say, here's our, we'll disclose everything. You got to prove that what they're doing is sleazy. And I have not seen sleaze. You read.
This is global. This is national security. This is so big that there needs to be a new Bretton Woods. The SEC stepping in and suing companies with enforcement actions is meaningless on the grand scheme. Powell stuttering and fidgeting when asked about the Fed coin tells you everything. Something is coming, and the U.S. is not being left behind. This is why the infrastructure bill out of nowhere had crypto regulations, and the Fed coin provision snuck into it. After seeing Ripple partner with the Bank of England and the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority and now Bhutan, we speculated that XRP is involved with something on the grand scale. After the SEC suit, I have talked to long-term XRP investors that now either sold or moved into other cryptos. The SEC did exactly what they were supposed to do, shake you out. Besides an outright fraud like BitConnect, when has the SEC ever stopped a crypto? They certainly didn't stop EOS or KIN.
But if you look in Central Asia, there's an enormous use of digital currencies, and digital currencies look like a good alternative to a national currency that may not be really very credible, and to an international currency that is subject to all these big political concerns. So it really might be that we're coming to the end of this dollar era as well. And the fundamental insight, I think, is that technology gives you a way of making new alternatives to the existing system that didn't exist when Richard Nixon was speaking in August 1971. The technology of distributed ledgers, with security, and the story of why this is necessary is to do with the end of the Vietnam conflict and the commitment of the United States in Southeast Asia. So it's exactly 50 years after President Nixon's speech on the 15th of August 2021 that the Taliban surprisingly and unexpectedly quickly take Kabul. And that moment, the chaotic end of the US presence in Afghanistan, I think will be commemorated in the same way as the 15th of August 1971, as the end of an era. So, this was a 50-year interplay. We're now in an era in which there is something else, and in which we're reimagining both language and money. Thank you.
We are coming to the end of the old paradigm and entering the Internet of Value. The difference between a democracy and a dictatorship is that in a democracy you vote first and take orders later. In a dictatorship, you don't have to waste your time voting. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed this video, please help me by liking and sharing it. The more likes and comments this video gets, the better chances I have for YouTube to recommend my videos to others. If you're interested in supporting this channel, I have a Patreon where I post the video early, ad-free, Discord access, and weekly chats. Thank you.